Ukraine's $600 million deep strike operation destroys Russia's secret jet and oil hub. In one of the most sweeping and coordinated overnight offensives of the war, Ukraine has delivered a crippling multi-front strike that shredded Russia's strategic aviation backbone, wiped out a top-secret laser aircraft prototype, and ignited massive fires across key oil export terminals. These targets weren't chosen at random. They formed the core of Russia's long-range air power, its battlefield surveillance, and its wartime funding pipeline. With more than $600 million in confirmed losses, this operation has raised urgent questions about Russia's diminishing defensive depth. Now, let's start from the very beginning of how tonight's operation unfolded. Today at 11:45 p.m, a coordinated series of Ukrainian deep strike operations inflicted approximately $600 million in combined losses on Russia's strategic infrastructure, aviation assets, and critical energy facilities. What unfolded through the night was not a routine bombardment, but a multi-branch offensive designed to degrade Russia's future air power potential, break its logistical backbone, and undermine its funding streams. The sequence of events showed deliberate timing, synchronized roles, and a clear intent to dismantle the Russian systems that support long-range air operations, and to sever the supply lines that fuel them. By 11:50 p.m, Ukrainian planners had already activated a joint deployment involving the rocket forces and artillery, special operations forces, and the Navy's coastal missile units. Each branch carried distinct tasks. Artillery elements provided diversionary pressure and masked radar signatures. Special operations teams supplied real-time reconnaissance, confirmed thermal activity at high-value facilities, and contributed targeting designations. The Navy's missile units prepared the long-range Neptune cruise missiles, while air-launched Bars jet UAVs were employed to saturate surveillance radars before precision strikes. The combination created a layered offensive. Fast UAV strikes to overwhelm response systems, followed by precision cruise missiles to achieve the intended structural damage. By 12:10 a.m., the first wave reached the Rostov region, where Ukrainian forces targeted the aviation and modernization hub around Taganrog. The Bars jet UAVs entered at a low altitude, using radar clutter generated by diversionary fire to mask their approach. Seconds later, the first impacts were recorded. Surveillance feeds showed intense ignition points inside the TTK Bereev aircraft repair plant, a facility responsible for maintaining airborne early warning aircraft and strategic bombers. Within minutes, secondary explosions spread along adjacent repair bays. This repair plant was central to Russia's aviation logistics because it handled deep overhaul work for the A-50 airborne early warning aircraft, Russia's eyes in the sky, and the Tu-95 MS strategic bombers that conduct long-range cruise missile launches. By disabling this facility, Ukraine struck at the core of Russia's airborne radar capability. Without the A-50 fleet regularly serviced, Russia's air defense network loses its wide area detection platform. Without Tu-95 servicing, its long-range strike fleet faces extended downtime. For Russia, this meant a potential multi-year gap in modernizations and a weakening of strategic aviation readiness. By 12:18 a.m, reports indicated that the strike had also damaged or destroyed one of Russia's most guarded experimental platforms, the A-60 airborne laser aircraft. This modified Il-76 platform had been used since the Soviet era as a testbed for directed energy systems. It carried a high-power laser turret intended for anti-satellite experiments and early missile defense concepts. Ukrainian analysts assessed that the aircraft, positioned in an auxiliary bay undergoing maintenance calibration, was directly struck during the initial wave. If confirmed, the loss represents a blow not only to Russia's current research efforts, but to decades of specialized work in directed energy weapon testing. The destruction of such a system eliminates a rare strategic research platform and removes one of the few aircraft capable of supporting future energy-based air defense research. Minutes later, later, around 12:25 a.m., the strikes widened to include the Molniya Atlant UAV production enterprise. This factory produced long-range reconnaissance drones essential for Russian targeting and battlefield surveillance. Ukrainian intelligence had monitored an uptick in assembly activity there for weeks, suggesting preparations for expanded flight operations. The precise damage assessment suggested that assembly lines, component storage halls, and electrical routing systems suffered intense fire propagation. By neutralizing both the repair center and the production facility in the same attack window, Ukraine simultaneously cut Russia's ability to maintain older platforms and produce new UAVs. At 12:40 a.m., the second operational prong began, targeting the energy infrastructure that fuels Russia's military and generates a large portion of its wartime revenue. The first impacts were recorded at the Sheskaris oil terminal near Novorossiysk, one of the largest Black Sea export hubs. But rather than striking storage tanks, the Ukrainian Neptune missiles were directed at a more strategically sensitive component, the oil loading stands. These elevated pumping structures allow for the controlled transfer of refined oil products into maritime tankers. Disabling them halts throughput, even if the storage tanks remain intact. Surveillance images showed ruptured piping systems, destroyed valve controls, and secondary fires spreading along the loading platforms. The damage here represented not only an operational disruption, but also a financial one. The Sheskaris terminal supports billions of dollars annually in crude and refined exports. Interruptions to this facility translate into reduced revenue flow into Russia's budget, including the segments used to sustain military procurement. Early projections placed the immediate financial impact at over $350 million, including stalled shipments, infrastructure reconstruction, and the value of damaged equipment. At 12:47 a.m., a simultaneous detonation was reported inside a nearby warehouse, storing components of an S-400 surface-to-air missile system. Initial analysis pointed to the destruction of a launch module and structural damage to the storage area. Hitting this system while it was positioned to guard a strategic energy export terminal indicated an apparent early warning coordination lapse. The S-400 platform carries long-range interceptors designed to protect high-value sites, yet it failed to detect the incoming strike sequence in time. Ukrainian analysts noted that the dual destruction, fuel export infrastructure, and part of the system meant to defend it, exemplified a coordinated targeting approach aimed at degrading both capability and defense simultaneously. By 1:10 a.m., additional strikes expanded the operation across the Black Sea region. The Tubips refinery complex recorded multiple impacts attributed to joint actions by Ukraine's security service and affiliated military units. Flames were noted spreading through several processing towers. This refinery supplies diesel and aviation fuel used across southern Russian military districts. The calculated timing of the attack, coinciding with the hits on Novorossiysk, suggested an effort to disrupt both production and export simultaneously, causing an extended break in supply chain continuity. The broader pattern became clear. Ukrainian forces were executing deep strikes against nodes of Russia's military-industrial network. First, they targeted the tools that enable strategic aviation. Then, they struck the production lines supporting reconnaissance and missile guidance. Finally, they moved to disrupt the refineries and export terminals, sustaining the fuel supply and economic stability. By 1:30 a.m., Ukrainian analysts outlined the deeper logic behind the night's operations. The coordinated nature of the attack showed a strategic progression developed over the past month. Earlier in the month, Ukrainian forces had already conducted drone strikes against electrical substations across several Russian regions, temporarily reducing the capacity of industrial sites to operate efficiently. They had also struck a refinery's auxiliary power system on November 1st, temporarily disabling part of its processing line. With those preliminary blows in place, the November 25th strike acted as a deeper, multi-layered follow-through, hitting the aviation repair hubs, drone assembly lines, high-value research aircraft, key export terminals, and the associated air defense components positioned to guard them. By 1:55 a.m., damage assessment teams highlighted that the loss of the A-50 maintenance capability alone could delay Russia's ability to sustain airborne early warning operations for months. Without these aircraft serving as forward radar platforms, Russia's long-range detection grid becomes fragmented. This limitation also reduces the effectiveness of their surface-to-air systems, which rely on coordinated early warning cues. Combined with the partial destruction of an S-400 launcher, the strike introduced new vulnerabilities into Russia's southern air defense architecture. At the same time, the disabling of the A-60 laser research aircraft removed a niche but critical element of Russia's advanced weapons development. Its destruction, if confirmed, represents a significant setback for long-term experimental research that cannot be easily replicated, as very few platforms are capable of supporting such specialized equipment. Analysts assess replacement costs could exceed $100 million if confirmed. By 2:20 a.m., fires at the oil terminals and refineries continued to burn, prompting emergency shutdowns of loading operations. Ukrainian analysts emphasized that hitting the oil stands rather than the tanks was a calculated choice. Repairing storage tanks is comparatively quick. Repairing loading stands and export mechanisms requires more extensive reconstruction. This prolongs downtime and stalls revenue cycles, amplifying the economic impact. At 2:45 a.m., cross-regional monitoring confirmed that the combined damage to aviation infrastructure, research platforms, refineries, and export terminals marked one of the most coordinated deep strike operations Ukraine had carried out to date. The multi-layered approach demonstrated a level of intelligence coordination, operational timing, and battlefield integration that suggested a maturing long-range strike capability. Each branch of the Ukrainian military contributed to the sequencing: diversion, saturation, penetration, and precision impact. The combined effect of the aviation strikes, refinery damage, and S-400 failure created a new set of operational constraints for Russia. Constraints that could shape air defense readiness, fuel supply, and long-range strike planning. In conclusion, the coordinated deep strike campaign that unfolded through the night resulted in more than $600 million in losses to Russia's strategic aviation assets, energy infrastructure, and air defense systems. By dismantling critical repair hubs, disrupting refinery output, and destroying both advanced research aircraft and active defensive components, Ukraine demonstrated a long-range capability. As these systems remain offline and reconstruction demands grow, will these sustained deep strike operations continue to erode Russia's strategic advantage, or will the conflict pivot into a new phase of long-range escalation? Share your thoughts below.